Steve is going to talk to us about the new superpower for women, self-defense for women. Go ahead and have a seat.
Great.
So I wanted to bring up the first thing right away, self-defense for women. I think one of the things that I really got out of the book was your attitude towards this is really about protecting women, partly from your own experience as a law enforcement officer, but also from your own experience as a young man. Mm-hmm. So, and I thought that that was really an interesting, because I think as a woman, it's easy to say, oh, well, I have intuition, great. Now, men are strong and women are intuitive and we're gonna be victims and men are not. But I think part of what was interesting to me and really moving in reading the book was that you, in fact, had an experience that made sexual assault something that you could empathize with.
Yeah, back when I was in 8th grade, I was playing on the recreation football team, and I ended up breaking my back. I ended up in the hospital, and while I was in the hospital, I was bedridden. I couldn't do anything. And about the 4th day in, a priest came in, and he's introduced himself, and I was a practicing Catholic at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to, some small chat, and then he said, would you like to give confession, my son? And when I tell people, it almost sounds like a joke. And I said, sure. So I gave him confession. Don't remember exactly what I said. And then, basically when I thought I was done, he looks to me and he says, just like this. I remember clearly. He says, Stephen, do you masturbate? And as a 14-year-old boy, and this being a priest, priests were God back then. I knew that there was something really, really wrong with that question, especially the way that he said it. So I thought I was being clever. I said, I don't even know what that is. And he asks me, your back is broken, Stephen? And I said, yes. And so he puts the Bible down, and he pulls down the covers of the bed sheets, and then he pulls down my pajamas and underwear, and he lifts my member off my belly, and he says, it's when you play with this, looking straight into my eyes. And I have no idea if it was 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Something spooked him, whether it was the nurses out in the hall, and he put me back down and grabbed his Bible and he left. And, my best friend came in, and I told her, I said, Sal, you're not going to believe what happened. And he said, we had to tell your parents. I said, I know we do. Because what they would do, they'd drop him off, he'd run up, and they'd come up. So they came up, and we told them, and the police were called, the hospital administrators were called. And they're around my bed, and they're interviewing me, and they're asking me all sorts of questions. And the police officer says to the doctor, he says, hey, doc, it's like, you're on medication? Again, priests we had much different vision of priests back then. So the doc kind of he looks, he goes, well, he was on medication when he came in, but he's not on it anymore. So the doctor looks at me, and goes, Stephen, could this have been a dream? And right then and there, I mean, even me as a 14-year-old kid, especially my parents, they were like, done, So it was more, that was a really horrific event compared to people that are true survivors that have gone through way more horrific. That just showed me that there are people in above you in higher places that certainly don't have a problem taking advantage of. He did it to me. He did it to many others. Back then, it was really difficult to track that sort of stuff. That's why over the years, the priesthood was really discovered as to what they were doing. And I've done 1,000 media interviews. I haven't told that. I waited for it to be included in the book.
And that was one of the things that really moved me about reading the book was Steve is coming at this not from the perspective of someone who's coming to tell us how to take care of ourselves, but someone who's really interested and has the experience of what it feels like to be powerless and wants women who are more likely to be victimized to be empowered. And that, I thought, was really a wonderful thing about the book. Having said that, a lot of what we're going to talk about today also applies to all genders. My 2 sons and 1 daughter are here today because I felt like the information was important enough that, and that it applies to everyone. So let's talk about situational awareness.
Yes.
This is something that you get right into at the beginning of the book, and something that I realized I was really bad at when I started reading. Tell us a little bit about the importance of situational.
You know, we're in a digital age today. We're on our mobile devices. They're attached to our hands. We're listening to music in our earbuds. And the predator utilizes a huge part of his game is the element of surprise. So if we remove that from him, first of all, if you even present as a hard target, he's likely going to go elsewhere. I've done social experiments where I've actually on television where I've actually shown, you know, how that the predator would compromise someone. But by employing situational awareness, you walk into a building, look to the left or right. You walk out of a building, look to the left or the right. You're looking for things. Everything has a baseline. You're looking for something that's outside of that baseline. When you walk into a mall, you know, with today, active shooters, you want to know where the exits are, because when things go bad, that is not the time to create a plan of action.
Okay, so this is, you used one of the phrases that is really useful in the book as well, hard target versus soft target.
Yes.
What's a hard target? What's a soft target?
A soft target, actually, you know, years ago, there was the Grayson Stein study, and they took video footage of people walking on a Manhattan street, and they took it to these hardened criminals, murderers, rapists, killers, and they showed them the video, and they said, what do you see in terms of people that you would try to take advantage of? And they all came up with, they let petite women, petite men, older seniors, men and women walk by, but they were looking at particular traits in terms of their gait, their posture, their stride, and they all, independently of one another, identified those particular traits, where they identified everyone independent chose the same people as soft targets. So when I did a social experiment with Inside Edition, I went on to a college campus, and I watched the young women coming out of the classroom building. And I was looking for the women that were texting. I was looking for the women that were on their cell phone. I was looking for the women that were looking at their notes. I was looking for the women that were eating their lunch and saying, oh my God, it's a beautiful day, I'm out of here. The women that came out and scanned the parking lot, saw me, maybe didn't see me, but were, you know, walking assertively with a purpose, I let them go. And I targeted the women that were preoccupied. That preoccupation, when you're surprised, you are that much more vulnerable, if you will. So it was a social experiment. Every girl, all 8 of the women that I targeted for being soft targets, allowed me in their car and drove off with me. And it was a segment to show, you know, are college students really trusting? Are we really trusting when we're out and about in a comfortable environment, which would be the college campus?
So this is really interesting, because the distraction is one thing that I got out of the book, right? I realized that I'm that woman who gets to the subway station, puts her bag on the ground, and starts digging for her Metro card, right? I stopped doing that right away. But distraction is definitely a factor, and cell phones. There's a big distraction that I notice when I'm out and about in the evening in particular, which is alcohol for young women. And that's something you also talk about in the book, the problem of, because people drink a lot these days, and drinking is a big part of socializing. And you talk about how to go out, but not turn yourself into a soft target because you're out to have a good time.
Well, a lot of the sexual assaults that we see that are perpetrated on college campuses, in nightclubs, they involve alcohol by one or both, usually both parties. And it's a neurotoxin, and it changes your behavior to some degree. It lowers your inhibitions. It makes you less able to mentally be able to deal with the situation, and physically, because of the neurotoxin, everything slows down. Your thought process, God forbid, if you did have to fight back, you are now 20, 30, 40% less efficient and effective to deal with someone that means to compromise you.
Exactly, and I think so we have these multiple distractions now. This is, was thinking about your book, I was walking down the street and saw 3 young women, one of whom could barely stand up. And it occurred to me that one who could barely stand up was lucky her friends were sober.
Yeah.
That's one thing that you talk about in the book is safety in numbers.
Yeah, we advocate go out as a group, go home as a group. But we also are realists in knowing that in the perfect world that'll happen. If you go out as a group and one of the girls wants to leave early, or one of the girls wants to stay late, or maybe she met someone that she's interested in and she wants to hang out with them, you've got to deal with that. You know, and so in the book I give step-by-step things that you can do on how to best depart from that situation. Like some people, oh, we're going to go out as a group, but man, you walk into this place and you just get that feeling things are not good. You want to get out of there because the longer you stay, it's not going to get better. The environment will likely get worse, whether it's a club or a frat house or a party among friends, and you know, there's many things that could go wrong. That first feeling you get, like if you walk in and you say, I really don't belong here, you want to follow that feeling.
And that's something that I think is another important takeaway from the book is allowing your body to tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
That you talk about how that gut feeling is actually a real physical sensation that you can listen to.
Yeah, I've had it over the years in law enforcement so many times. My first experience was at 17. Long story short, I saved the life of a child that was buried in the sand when 20 adults stood around and just stood there in frozen. And I was going to walk 15 minutes away to a place called Indiantown in Old Saybrook. I went 5 minutes. I had this overwhelming feeling that I had to turn back. And I convinced my girlfriend, now wife, that we got to go back. And she's like, oh, we're going. I said, look, the waves are, and if I hadn't gone back, this young 8-year-old boy would have died.
Yeah, and that, I think one of the things you talk about, though, is how women are socialized to ignore some of their gut feelings. We're taught to be nice, we're taught to be helpful, we're taught to be polite, and how that's not necessarily the best thing for us to do.
You ought to meet some of the female cops I've worked with. They have amazing intuition. But in general, in some homes, some families, you're brought up in such a way as to kind of put your... I believe women have, the statistics show that it's 50-50. I believe women have the greater gift of intuition, but often they're apt to put it aside. In all the social experiments that I did, 21 out of 21 women, they all said, I knew something wasn't right, but I'm the team leader, I wanted to help. You know, so they have that feeling, but they sometimes don't listen to it. So it's important. It could be a sense of foreboding. It could be a tickle in your belly, you know, that gut feeling they say. It could be a lump in your throat. It could be a little tingle in your chest, the hair rising on the back of your neck. Because every woman that I've ever dealt with in the history of my law enforcement, when they were encountered personally by someone that meant them an ill intent, they had that feeling. They knew something wasn't right. And if we listen to that, the only thing intuition will do you wrong is you will disregard it. If you listen to it, it will never harm you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. I mean, how many people here have had that sense of foreboding and kept going with whatever you thought, you know, oh, but he's really cute. Oh, but she's a little old lady. She can't possibly have anything against me. Why would she? And I think that that's one of the key takeaways from reading the book is really allowing yourself to listen to that little voice in your head. But then one of the things that I think we tend to do in our desire to be nice is be afraid that we are judging people. And what occurred to me as I was reading the book was really the idea of racial profiling. Mm-hmm. Like, I think particularly for young women out on their own, the not wanting to judge someone based on the way they're dressed or their race or their ethnicity, we tend to be like, oh, I don't want to think that. And is there a way that you can kind of understand that that's not what you're doing versus maybe when you might be doing it?
Well, if you have that uncomfortable feeling, and there's certain pre-indicators of behavior that people would do when they're targeting you. For example, recently I did some interviewing on subway groping, and all these women that have been subway groped, they were like, did that just happen? No, can't be. Did it just happen? I think he did. And so they debate amongst themselves as to what it is. If someone, regardless of whether they're in a business suit or they're, a blue collar, it doesn't matter. If they give you that feeling that you don't belong there, particularly with them, like you might have a target glance, somebody that wishes you, that wants to maybe steal something for you, and he sees, oh, look at that gold bracelet. And it's called a target glance, and he's looking at that because he wants it. It's like in law enforcement. If he looks at my gun, he wants to go for my gun. He looks at the doors and the windows, it's likely he wants to escape. So people subconsciously will do things that will put you on notice, and you may not know why, but you'll say, I just don't feel well. You're talking to yourself, of course. Our internal subconscious is, about 80%. So we have dialogue with ourselves all day long. We are assessing and look at that person over there, but we're talking to ourselves. So listen to that inner voice. It's very powerful.
So you mentioned the target glance. Are there any other things that a woman should look for in a person, regardless of how they're dressed or who they happen to be, that should put you on notice?
Yeah, we refer to it as keep your head on a swivel and watch your sex. So as you're going, you're just glancing. And if you happen to see maybe somebody's watching you. Maybe he's off on the sidewalk or a little bit excreted, or you're in that subway and he's waiting sort of in the back because you'll pull out a couple dollars and he'll want to give you his bogus subway token, which has nothing on it, for like $2. So you save $1. You notice that by target glancing. When you're walking by someone, it's okay to put them on notice. You don't have to look at them, but you sort of glance this way. And then a lot of people, when they feel intimidated, they feel that someone is targeting them, they feel that someone is maybe watching them for whatever purpose, they might do this or they might look away. But you get into the habit, keep your head on the level, where you'll look this way and you just keep walking. And that's the sign of a hard target. If you were some stalking me out, watching me, and I looked and I went kind of like this, that's the sign that I'm intimidated. Or if I looked away, that's the sign that I'm intimidated. So we get into the habit, and you can practice it. Just look at somebody randomly and for half a second, and just bring your head back on a level. That's a sign of a hard target. That's a sign of strength. Taking away the element of surprise from someone takes away 70% of someone that wishes you bad intent.
And that was really key, the idea that you create a blueprint for these situations.
When I saved that kid on the beach, I had read a pamphlet about rescue breathing. None of the adults on that beach knew what to do. I read a pamphlet a month before, vividly, and I was able to perform and save his life. So when you think about something could go wrong, somebody's breaking into your dorm, your apartment, your house, and what do I do? Well, your general response goes, your heart rate goes up to, 175 beats, you go into the frozen zone. At 115 beats, you lose your fine motor skills, your ability to dial. I've seen women men and women not be able to dial 911. Upwards of towards 135, 145, you lose your complex, which are a lot of what martial art programs teach. And then upwards, our program at 145 to 175 thrives because we use gross motor skills, our big, stronger muscles. But if you don't have a plan, you're more apt to panic and not know what to do. So by creating that plan, thinking about something that could go wrong in your life, come up with a solution. Think about it vividly. In law enforcement, we call it visualization. The military calls it emergency conditioning, and we use it very, very effectively. Like, thank God, I've never had to use my weapon. I've never had to shoot anybody. But in my mind, I've gone through thousands and thousands and thousands of scenarios so that there would be no gray line where I had to save my life or the life of a third person.
So, and that's one thing I would say about reading the book. Like, not all of what you'll read in here will be easy to read, especially like as someone who has been a victim. There were a couple of things that I read in here and I was like, wow, that's what happened to me, and it was not easy to read. But I think one of the benefits of reading about it is that that's another opportunity to rehearse without being in the situation. So just because we talked about it before, did anybody take our boxing class I know Lauren does. So what's the difference between what you teach and say what Josh or Xavier teaches people in our boxing classes?
For women?
Yes, in terms of defense.
We started 20-something years ago. We had a group of survivors, sexual assault, domestic violence, kidnapping, date rape, drugs, and they asked us to put together a program. So my partner, Brad Parker in Phoenix, Arizona, a longtime martial artist, boxer, karate guy, began teaching them some really cool martial art techniques, and he found out quickly two things. They couldn't retain the technique, new people couldn't retain the technique in a 45 to 60-minute class. And number two, he was teaching them how to fight like a man. Now, if you teach a woman to fight like a man and she goes up against a man through, typically, in that dynamic, through evolution, men typically are bigger, stronger, more pain tolerant. Men have a reptilian brain. If you've ever seen a real street fight, guy punches back. Guy kicks back. Guy bites back. So it's telegraphing. So if you've never, and I see it in the police academy, if you've never been punched in the head, it's like a lightning bolt going through your head. And it can take all the fight out of you. So he began reversing that process and teaching them how to fight like a woman, using their bigger, stronger, more powerful weapons against a man's more vulnerable points, putting them in the positions that they found themselves in. And we were talking earlier about high-level martial artists that I have done investigations on, that their martial art didn't work against their non-martial art acquaintance or boyfriend. And it's devastating to them. The dynamic of a sexual assault, you're going to be grabbed and taken somewhere, or you're going to be grabbed and brought down to the ground. And if it's, say, the intent was right now, it would be within 5 seconds that he would be trying to get you to the ground. If you're taken from point A to point B and it's a stranger, in the 90th percentile, you're just not going to come back. It's unforgiving. So we do that preventative aspect. Don't ever let yourself be taken from here to there. The guy says, do what I say or I'll kill you. Don't scream, you scream. Don't run, you run. So it's sort of, he can't harm you there. He can't kill you. He doesn't want to kill you. He doesn't want to sexually assault you, harm you in some way. He wants to get you to the secondary location. So by fighting back, your value to him as a soft target diminishes. So he would rather move on elsewhere because he relies on the compliant fear factor, that what he says will get you to do what he wants you to do through fear. Or he may say something like, if you do what I say, everything will be okay. And you'll want to believe that, but the end result is horrific.
So then the techniques that you're talking about are ones that can extricate you quickly and also, I think, empower you to feel like you can do something.
Yes.
And I think, I'll just say, like, from personal experience, I have a lot of karate training, I've done a lot of boxing, taught kickboxing. The last time I was in a situation where I would have thought all of that would have applied, none of it applied. Because I had no rehearsal, and I had, I could kick someone in the head, but kicking them in the head was not going to be the solution. So having lots of fancy Taekwondo skills doesn't necessarily
We
translate.
advocate, you might kick the guy's butt, but your objective is to change his behavior enough so that you can escape the situation. So you might kick, our girls, I've been knocked out by girls 90 pounds when I wore the suit. Kicking through the suit knocked me out, unconscious. Because of the ground is their base, kicking up. It's called an up kick. Actually, it's illegal in the UFC, or Ultimate Fight Championship, where they kick up from the ground, and your targets are much more, his targets are much more accessible. So again, you might kick his butt. Your objective, change his behavior so you've got 3, 4, 5 seconds to escape the situation, if you will.
Last thing, I would like to hear 5 things a woman can do when she leaves this room to not be a soft target.
Employ situational awareness. Take in your environment. I mentioned that everything has a baseline. You're looking for things that are a little bit off baseline. The baseline in New York City is different than the baseline in a small suburb in Tennessee. However, regardless of where you are, if you drop your guard low enough, there could be someone there to take advantage of you. Believe in that gut feeling. Let that intuitive process be a guide. Get in touch with it. People watch. I go into a restaurant, my back is to the wall, and I'm watching people, and I'm trying to figure out, is he having a good day or a bad day, or what does she do for a living, what does he do for a living, or family, they're interacting, and I say, well, I wonder what their conversation is, by looking at their facial expressions, and learn some self-defense. Create that blueprint. Think of something bad happens to somebody you know in your family or a friend or in the media. Think about, what would I do in that situation? Or you're on the subway and you see somebody hassling somebody and he's not leaving them alone. Well, start to think, what would I do? How would I handle that? And come up with a solution to a problem. Because when it really happens, you'll never have the opportunity to create a plan of action like you would prior. So if we examine it, think about it, we create a file. Your brain doesn't know if you've lived it or if you've thought about it vividly. It creates a file as if you have.
Awesome. And if you're like me, make sure you know where your MetroCard is when you get to Subway. Okay, awesome.